Welcome to my 2024 TED Talk. Thank you all for coming. My name is Nora, Olivier. Ever since I was a little girl, I've always loved dogs, and I've always loved hanging out with my dogs. When I was little, I would take my dog Moby and pull him around a wagon in my driveway for hours. And even now with my two dogs I like to take them up to Perg on little adventures with me. So that leads me to my topic and question, which is how does spaying and neutering in a shelter differ from doing so privately, and how do each affect the dog population growth? Starting with a show of hands, how many of you have or have had a dog? Keep your hands up if you got that dog spayed or neutered. Keep them up one more time if you waited until your dog was a year old to get them spayed or neutered. Okay, interesting. You can see now that it is not common knowledge that you're not supposed to spay or neuter your dog super young. This research is still very new, so let's dive in. This is how I started. This was my first research question, which was how does spaying and neutering a big dog breed before a year old affect their chances of getting diseases? As we all know, there are hundreds of dog breeds, especially with all the new Labradoodles, Chihuahua Doodles, I don't even know. This chart was pulled from a UC Davis study and was collaborated on by 4 different professors. These are the suggested guidelines for the age of neutering for 35 different dog breeds. At the very bottom, highlighted in green, you can see that it says, this is a summary of the spay and neuter guidelines based on findings of increased risk or joint disorders and cancers. The term choice means that there is no increased risk for any age. So I wanted to give you guys a comparison of a small dog breed versus a bigger dog breed. So in orange, I have highlighted a Chihuahua. For both males and females, you have the choice on when to spay or neuter them, meaning you could do it at 8 weeks or 8 months. In yellow, you'll see I have highlighted a golden retriever. For males, they recommend to wait beyond 11 months to neuter, and for females to leave intact, meaning to never spay them. Why is this? Genetics are a huge part of spay and neuter, and golden retrievers don't have the best genetics. The other 2 main factors is body size and gender. So again, the hormonal maturity between these 2 dogs is also very different. Newfoundlands, which is the one on the left, will continue to grow until about 18 to 24 months old, while Chihuahuas are fully grown at about 9 to 12 months old. So for Newfoundlands, you should spay or neuter them at 18 to 24 months old, and for Chihuahuas, 6 to 9 months old. So remember how I said that joint disorders and cancers are associated with this? I focused on a few in my early research, and one of the ones I focused on was hip dysplasia, which is a deformity of the hip that occurs during bone growth. It's not fatal, but it's very painful and uncomfortable. Here I have a comparison of a healthy hip versus hip dysplasia. On a healthy hip, the ball and socket fit perfectly together, and on hip dysplasia, the ball is sitting away from the socket. I also focused on osteosarcoma, which is more commonly known as bone cancer. It is a primary bone tumor that takes place in the limbs of the dog, but can develop in the bones of the spine, skull, and rib cage. Over here I have common little chart or thing of common locations of osteosarcoma in dogs. My family has had 2 yellow labs, and both of them have gotten osteosarcoma. Our first lab got it in his front leg down below, like highlighted, and then our other dog got it back in his knee. The last thing I focused on was ACL tears, which happen when the fibers in the ligament weaken over time. It is estimated that 30 to 50% of dogs who tear one ACL will tear the other one within a few years. So the reason I chose to steer away from the early spay and neuter aspect is because although we can assume that these various diseases are associated with early spay and neuter, the research was lacking and all over the place. So I landed on my question now. Throughout all my research, I kept coming across dog overpopulation and shelter overpopulation, especially in my interviews with people. And so I decided to shift my research question to focus more on that, but also still focus on early spay and neuter. I talked with Colleen Dunning, the development manager at La Plata County Humane Society, and she told me that a big part of their mission is to get people to spay and neuter their pets. She also said that La Plata County definitely has a pet overpopulation problem. She told me that it usually starts on the Navajo reservation, but it spills over into La Plata County, creating an issue for us as well. 3.1 million dogs enter U.S. animal shelters per year, and of those dogs, 390,000 are euthanized due to lack of homes. One of the two main factors of dog overpopulation is allowing dogs to reproduce with little to no chance of finding homes for the litter, meaning you just take them to a shelter and give them away. The other being families giving up their dogs to shelters due to not being able to afford them or care for them. As I mentioned, I interviewed multiple people, and I asked the question, do you believe dog overpopulation is more important than spaying and neutering later in life to avoid medical issues? And every single person said that they believe that dog overpopulation is more important to keep in mind. With all the research that I've done on both early spay and neuter and dog overpopulation, I fully agree. There's a Colorado state law that states a rescue or animal shelter will not release a cat or dog to a potential owner unless that animal has been spayed or neutered by a licensed veterinarian, or the owner signs an agreement stating they will spay or neuter the dog within 90 days of the date of release. This is my dog Tico. We got him from Annie's Orphans, and when we first went to visit him, he was not neutered, but before we were allowed to take him home, he had to be neutered. So what is the difference between spaying and neutering publicly versus privately? As I mentioned, with the Colorado state law, dogs in shelters and rescues have to be spayed and neutered before being released out to the public, meaning the new owner doesn't really need to worry about that and they aren't really responsible for it. Well, when you get a dog from a breeder or from the Walmart parking lot or from as a stray, you as the new owner are responsible to get that dog spayed or neutered. So my family has gotten 2 yellow labs from the same breeder, but we got them 11 years apart from each other. So Moby, the one on the left, we got in 2009, and when we got him, he came with a contract, as most dogs do, from a breeder. And on his contract, there was no recommended time on when to neuter him. But when we got my dog Frankie in 2020, the one on the right, there was a recommended time to wait until 20 months. And this is her contract that we got for her. There's also a guarantee on these contracts, and this guarantee means that if you fix your dog at the recommended time that the breeder suggests, and your dog gets hip dysplasia or another joint disorder, then you could potentially, or before the guarantee expires at 25 months, then you could potentially go back to the breeder and ask for your money back or ask for another dog. From all the vets and breeders and shelters that I've talked to, the breeders are placing the most importance on this topic of early spay and neuter relating to medical issues. So again, this is my childhood dog Moby. We got Moby neutered at 5 months old because there was no recommended time, so we followed the time that the vet had suggested. When he was 4 years old, he tore his ACL, and within 1 year, he tore the other one. Remember that fact I said about 30 to 50% of dogs who tear one will tear the other? That happened with my dog Moby. When he was 10, he was running in the yard to get a ball and broke his leg out of nowhere. My mom took him to the vet, and they diagnosed him with osteosarcoma. The cancer was mainly in his back right leg, which is the one that he had broke. The vet gave us the option to amputate his leg to reduce the cancer from spreading and give him longer to live. Which, as you can see, we did. He's a little tripod in that picture. Why does this matter? This chart over here is a representation of the number of dogs spayed and neutered from 2019 to 2021. The red line represents 2020. And as you can see, there's a big drop down in the month of April in 2020. This was due to COVID-19 and the pandemic. Spay and neuter clinics closed to the public, allowing dogs to roam intact, causing unwanted litters and even worse, overcrowding in shelters. Why we should pay attention. I'm going to give you these facts again. 3.1 million dogs enter U.S. animal shelters per year due to unwanted litters and strays and giving your dogs up. And 390,000 of those dogs are euthanized due to lack of homes. In the end, the potential benefits of early spay and neuter outweigh the risks. So what should we be doing differently? We should be getting our dogs spayed and neutered. That is very, very important. You might be asking, well, when should I get my dog spayed or neutered? If you think you could wait until a year and you can be a responsible pet owner and not allow your dog to roam or possibly get a dog pregnant or get pregnant, then I say wait until a year. But if you do so, it is your civic responsibility to make sure that that dog does not reproduce. If not, I say to go with the vet recommended time, which is 6 months for most / all dog breeds. Some people face cost issues with spay and neuter. And if you get your dog at a Walmart parking lot or from a friend, you might not want to go pay a bunch of money to a vet to spay or neuter them. Places like La Plata County Humane Society offers low-cost services to people who cannot afford them. One of their low-cost services they offer is spay and neuter. So if you're one of those people who can't afford spay and neuter, there's options for you to not just not spay or neuter your dog. So in the end, please spay and neuter your dog. The end. Thank you.